welcome to this tutorial. We're going to be making some GUIs in processing. We're going to be making a set of buttons. I'm going to take you through a number of different processes, a couple programming concepts. We're going to cover the idea of a class and try to make a pretty robust button GUI to make buttons that also can send out OSC messages. So I'm building on the tutorials I did for a sampler, and here you can find the two links here. You can go over those, and I'm just going to take that code that I left off with. Basically, I created a visual GUI to launch samples that has some nice feedback and also mouse over actions. All right, so I'm starting off where I left off at this last video, and there are a few modifications I'd like to make because this GUI is now going to be more universal. It's not just going to be for triggering samples. So the thing I'd like to do here is to change the little logic that I used for the size. Instead of width and height, we used size. And then we had this little size 1, size 2 calculation, which, to be honest, was a bit clunky just to get the pictures to be a little bit inset. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just change this logic a little bit, and we'll go ahead and use width and height. So let's go ahead and just delete that right there. And then instead of size 1, size 2, let's just call it be button width. Okay, and I think that was right. Well, 50 is fine, and we'll call it button height, and we'll make the height a little bit smaller just so we can see that changes. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and introduce, because we do still want to inset it. We'll introduce an integer here. We'll call it the picture inset gap, something like that. PI gap, pgap. And let's make that equal to, I think it was 3 or something like that. All right, now let's go ahead and shuffle about some of these things. So nicely in the new IDE for processing, it shows us all these underlined things where it thinks we made mistakes. Sometimes it kind of gives me a complex because even as I'm typing things, it tells me I'm doing stuff wrong. But that's all right. So if we think about this through a little bit, left is equal to size plus gap times I, and this is the horizontal buttons. So this is our B width, right? Button width. Since size was button width and height, in this case, it was the button width. And then R was the same thing, the button width. So we'll just copy that. Now Y, size 1 is actually the button height, right? And then we took care of those there. That's fine. Let's get rid of some of these lines. And then in the draw here, so if we remember, we should have made some more comments, and I'll go ahead and do this. This is moused over behavior. So the button gets a little bit bigger when we mouse over it. All right, and the idea was that we needed to inset the button a little bit so that the image, when you clicked on it, it still gave you that visual feedback because we're just changing the fill of the button, but the image was completely covering the button, so you didn't see that visual feedback. So we inset the image a little bit. And we made the rectangle bigger as we moused over it. All right. So instead of doing this, we're just going to have a mouse over behavior based on the width and the height. Here being that we're going to take the original X, scooch it over a little bit, and then by let's say 3 pixels, and then double that in shrink that double that in width, keeping the button nice and centered even though it's getting larger, right? So if we scooch it over, say 3 pixels, we're going to go ahead and, instead of all that, like I said, it was a bit awkward, we're going to do the PIGAP, the pgap, or the picture inset gap, okay, which actually it isn't, it's just it's the mouse over gap, but oh well, we'll keep the pgap. And also then the left is going to be the same thing. It's going to be minus the pgap, or the mouse over gap. And then here we want the width, the button width, and we want it plus PIGAP times 2. And same with the height will be the same thing, except it'll be the button height. So we'll just copy that bit of code over there and paste that over there. All right. And let's do the same thing with the image. The image is just inset there, I guess, by 5 and 10. It's the same idea, but it's inset. So let's grab that, pig app. So it's the same exact thing, pig app, and then this is plus pig app times 2 minus 10. That's the inset. Button width, sorry. The button width plus the pig app times 2 minus 10. And this is the same thing except it's button height. Okay, and then we just have to change the, so that if that was the moused over behavior, this is the non-moused over behavior. And then we just have to change this to button width and button height. And the image as well, button width and button height. Let's see if any red flags come up. No, seem to be okay there. So let's save that and run it and see what happens. Okay, it still is behaving as we expected it to. Yep, it's growing and it's being inset. And our picture's a little bit smushed. I think that we're just going to live with that for now. All right, so that's one of the changes I want to make, because we're going to make a more generic universal button structure. And so we'll go ahead and just leave that button width and button height and just make those changes there. The other thing I'd like to do as well is change, right now it's a horizontal line of buttons. So what if you wanted a vertical line of buttons? We should be able to do that as well. Do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable here, and we're going to make it an integer, and we're going to call it HV for horizontal vertical, and let's make it equal to 0. All right, and right now these things, the left, top, right, top, and bottom, are being calculated for this horizontal row of buttons. So we can just say if HV equals 0, then we just want it to look just like that. And you know, we can actually make this code here much more efficient here by just using one for loop, or at least tidier. I don't know how, if it makes a huge difference. So I'm going to copy all the initializations, or cut them and paste them over here. So they're all in a row. So all LRTB are all initialized first. Do all of this in one for loop. So I'm going to go for like that, and then end the for loop down here, and then just get rid of all these internal for loops. So save us some typing. Well, we've already typed it, but okay. And there you go. So that's the for loop, and that's the if. Okay. So and that's a little bit more efficient, though, you know, for demonstration purposes earlier. Go that way. Okay, now we want to do the vertical line of buttons. So we can do an else. I suppose you can do diagonal as well. So maybe we'll just do if, just in case we have more than one mode. If HV equals 1. And let's just copy all of this here. And actually, I'm sorry. So outside the if statement, we can initialize these anyways, because they're going to happen. So we can do those outside the if statement, though. I might not be happy. No, it will be. It'll be fine. So let's initialize those so we don't have to do it twice. I shouldn't anyways. Outside of the if HV else. And then we'll grab that for loop with all the button initializations. Pop that in there. And then we'll look at what's going on. So xi, the initial x, and then it's going to do a multiplication on this, an I multiplication of the button width plus the gap, which makes sense, right? Because we want to scooch it over by the width of the button plus whatever gap is between the button, and that's going to be the I. So button number 2 will be, I will be 1, and so that's going to be start at one button width plus the gap. Swap that around between X and Y axes. So left and right, well, let's just keep that there so we can copy that code. Actually, there's just going to be XI and LI plus button width, or and here it's going to be instead the TI, the top, is going to look a lot like this. So it's going to be actually YI, the initial Y, plus, and then let's just copy this bit of code here, because it's going to be the button height plus the gap times I. So button height. So we'll do that. And then, right. So this is going to be just XI plus button width. And we can get rid of that. Now we don't need to copy it anymore, right? Because it's vertical, so it's going to be initial X, and then each right will be the initial X plus the button width. The top will be the initial Y plus this button height plus the gap times I. And then the bottom will be all this business, but we can actually just say, like we did with the earlier thing, we can say it's actually YI. YI plus TI I, because this will already be filled since we're going in order. So this will be filled with that already. So we just need the top plus the button height, another button height, right? So whatever the top is, the bottom will be the top plus another button height, all right? And then you can just change this variable. So if you want a vertical line of buttons, we'll just put that as a 1 instead of a 0 and run that. Oh, it's HV. And there you go. Now it's a vertical line of buttons instead. And it looks like we have to make some more better accommodations for the text there. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just increase it's easy enough, increase the gap, say to 30 maybe, something like that. And let's make a bigger height so we can see it. Let's make 800 or something like that. Just so we can see. It's kind of massive, but there you go. We have a better gap for our horizontal. And then again, if we just change that to 0, then we have a vertical line. Kind of a massive gap, but you know, you can play with that as well. Let me end this tutorial here. I know it's very sort of introductory, but let's go ahead and end it here because we've made all the changes we're going to make. In the next tutorial, I'll pick up I want to introduce you to the concept of making a class, because we're going to take all of this information that we've done for one bank of buttons, and we're going to create a actually button bank class and go through sort of the ins and outs of doing that class. So that kind of deserves its own video. Okay, so good luck with that, and I hope that works.